Welcome to the home sequence that I promised you that I'd release today. This is one of the many ways that you can do these exercises at home to give yourself the demands that your body needs so you can stay healthy. So try it out, read the full entire description of everything below. Use your best judgment. If something feels good, keep doing it. If something doesn't feel good, you can either do it with 10% of the intensity you're probably doing it with, or you can just skip it. So either way, check it out, enjoy, and reach out if you have any questions. Stand with your ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders in a vertical straight line. You can hold on to a door jamb, a windowsill, or a countertop, anything that makes sure that this isn't a balancing exercise for you. The most important part of this exercise is that your hips, knees, ankles, and shoulders stay in the vertical line as you do the motion and your heels come up off the ground. For the first set, point your toes straight ahead. You're going to then roll up onto the balls of your feet, keeping your weight evenly distributed over all 5 toes. Most people try to send the weight outward towards the pinky toes or collapse the weight inward just towards the big toe. As you lower your heels back down to the ground, make sure that the speed is the same at which you came up off the ground with. Most people try to jolt this motion. I want you to slowly restore the function by going nice and smooth. Find a very subtle rhythm to this. And again, make sure that the pelvis stays directly vertical over the ankles. Repeat for the recommended number of repetitions. For the second set, point your toes outward at about a 45-degree angle. Your heels are going to be fist width apart. The instructions are still the same. Find a slow, smooth tempo and keep your weight evenly distributed over all 5 toes. For the third set, point your toes inward so your big toes are touching. Repeat for the recommended number of repetitions, and again, remember to keep the pelvis vertical. Don't allow your body to shift forward or shift backward to complete this exercise. Stand with your heels, butt, and upper back against the wall, and hopefully you've got some space on this wall with your feet pointed straight ahead of you, about 4 to 5 inches apart from one another, so hip width apart. Bring your arms completely out to the side with your palms faced forward. If you don't have a lot of wall space, you can actually do the progressed version of this by interlacing your hands behind your head. This is going to severely reduce the amount of wall space that you need. But either way, if you can, start with both arms straight out to the side. With your stomach muscles completely relaxed, bend at the waist so your upper body slides against the wall towards one side. Keep both sides of your hips and your butt touching the wall as well as you bend to the side. Try not to let your arms move. Rather, make sure it's your trunk that moves and you're bending at your side. You're going to keep your hips in the exact same place throughout the entire exercise. As you come back up towards the middle, then bend to the other side. You're going to repeat this back and forth 10 full repetitions. Make sure that your heels stay flush and flat against the ground the whole time. And again, be mindful of your pelvis swaying from side to side. I want this to almost feel like your upper body is a metronome as you're bending from one side to the next. When you've completed your recommended number of repetitions, widen your feet to about shoulder width apart, but keep your feet pointing straight. Repeat the same exercise. When you've completed the recommended number of repetitions, do the same movement, go even wider. After you've completed your new set of repetitions, you're going to then bring your legs back up to the start position where your feet and knees are hip width apart, and then repeat one final step. Balance and symmetry check. Can you bend to the right the same as you bend to the left? Where do you feel tension bending to the right compared to where do you feel tension bending to the left? Are you able to breathe your way through this exercise, or do you flex your abs and try to brace your core and lock down your breath? I want you to bring a high level of fluid, dynamic motion and rhythmic breathing as you find the timing of this exercise. This is not about depth, this is about function. So don't force range of motion on this. I don't care if you only move 2 to 5 inches to the side and then come back up to the middle and move 2 to 5 inches to the other side. Balance and symmetry is the key point here. As you slide from side to side, pay attention to keeping both shoulders flush back against the wall, with your elbows touching the wall too. Your entire body should remain with contact on that wall as you do this sliding motion, and at no point going to either side should any part of you peel away from that wall. Stand with your feet hip-width apart, pointed straight ahead and parallel with each other. Lift your arms straight up out in front of you at shoulder level. Now, march forward, lifting your knees high. Make sure not to lift your knee too high as to cause your pelvis to tilt back and your lower back to flatten. You want to keep your pelvis in place and your lower back arched throughout this exercise. From the side view, your shoulders and hips should stay vertical the entire time. Make sure not to lean forward, backward, or to the side just to raise the leg off the ground. Keep both shoulder blades back, gently retracted together. Repeat for the recommended number of repetitions. What I see most often when people walk is how they use their upper body almost as a wrecking ball, throwing their weight around just to help their legs lift off the ground to take a step. These stork walks are really designed for you to become aware of what your upper body's doing as you step up and down. Be mindful of what your upper body's doing, and you want to keep it as balanced over your hips as possible. This is the whole goal with this exercise. Once you feel like you truly understand this upper body position, then you can have the awareness to pay attention to when you lift your legs. Do you bring your heel just straight up towards your butt? Or do you bring your hip and your knee to a 90-degree angle and truly use the muscles in the front of the hips? Most people with tight, stiff hamstrings will lift their leg off the ground and their heel will get raised directly up underneath and close towards their butt. This makes the hamstring have to work significantly harder just to walk every single step all day long. No wonder why the hamstrings tend to tighten up and stiffen up on people who don't truly lift their leg off the ground in a proper way. Balance and symmetry check. Do you feel like both legs are doing the same thing? Does one side have more balance than the other? Can you keep your upper body still while raising your right leg? But as soon as you lift your left leg, you've got to completely shift to the side to do so. This is how imbalance and asymmetry show up within your body. And this will balance out over time by practicing this sequence. Stand with your feet 4 to 5 inches apart, parallel to each other with both of them pointing straight ahead. Curl the tips of your fingers down so that the first knuckles are bent and the tips of the fingers are touching the tops of the palm. Think about making a fist, but without actually closing your hand. You're just going to curl your fingers. Thumbs pointed out to the side as your palm remains open. Bring your arms straight out to your sides and your shoulder blades gently back together. With your elbows completely locked out and straight, palms facing down, and thumbs pointed forward, perform forward circles. Do for the recommended number of reps. Then turn your palms face up with your thumbs pointed behind you and perform the opposite direction of rotation. Keep your stomach muscles relaxed the entire time. Your fingers should remain in the grip the entire time as well, and your shoulders should be back together throughout the entire motion, whether you're going forward or backward rotations. We're trying to keep your shoulder blades back together and have your shoulder learn how to rotate within the socket. What most people will find is that they can really only perform this motion by separating the shoulder blades or raising the shoulders higher up towards the neck. This exercise is about keeping the shoulder in place, keeping the shoulder blades in place, and letting true rotation happen within the rotator cuff and the head of the shoulder. Balance and symmetry check. It's not uncommon for people to feel very out of balance when doing this exercise. You're probably going to notice one shoulder and one arm might look different, work different, or even feel different than the other side. This is imbalance showing up within the shoulders. If this creates any issues when your hands are raised shoulder height out to the side, you can always lower your arm to whatever height actually feels comfortable. And maybe for some people at the start, that really means arms are folded down by your side. And that's okay. Just do what you can to restore some movement and function until you become functional enough to where the hands can go out to the side. Stand with your feet pointing straight ahead and hip width apart. Place your palms right on the top of your pelvis with your fingertips pointing down. Actively pull your shoulders back together and your elbows back together. If you're looking forward in a mirror, your elbows should be directly behind you and not flared out to the sides. Pulling your elbows back and your shoulder blades together, gently use the muscles in the front of the hips to tip your pelvis forward so you have a little bit more of an exaggerated arch in your lower back. Tighten your quads and hinge forward at your hips. Make sure that your hips do not go backwards and the weight shifts into your heels. Keep all of the weight in the balls of the feet and the front of the toes. From the side view, your ankles, knees, and hips will remain in a vertical position as your elbows and shoulders are actively pulling you back. Keep your eyes on the horizon, looking forward, straight ahead the whole time. It's incredibly important in this position to learn how to breathe. I do not want you to tense up your abs and stress and hold and fight your way through this. Learn to bring a gentle ease to this exercise as your body really learns how to truly function around a calm, rhythmic breath. Balance and symmetry check. Pay attention to can both shoulders do this at the same time? Does it feel like one is stiffer or tighter than the other? Are you able to hold on and grab both quads and keep them tight throughout the entire duration, or does one want to turn off and relax more than the other? Stand with your feet 4 to 5 inches apart, parallel to each other and pointed straight ahead. Curl the tips of your fingers at the first knuckle so the fingertips touch the top of the palms, but the palms still remain open, thumbs pointed out. Bring your knuckles to the sides of your head by your temples with your palms facing in front of you and your thumbs pointed down. Bring your elbows together in front of you to touch, and then back to your sides, as far back as they can go without your shoulders raising up too high. Try to keep your elbows high and the shoulders low so that they don't elevate throughout the entire motion. Your stomach muscles should remain relaxed, and you're going to repeat this motion back and forth in a slow fashion. People try to use speed to power through this. I want you to really think about your shoulder blades coming back together and then separating as your elbows move out in front of you. This exercise is about reestablishing the gliding mechanism of your shoulder blades. Most of our shoulders don't get enough movement on a daily basis, and this helps to remind them that they should possess their full range of function and motion. Balance and symmetry check. Pay attention to if you feel like one shoulder moves higher than the other as you're doing this exercise. It can be really helpful to do this in front of a mirror if you have one. If not, just pay attention to how it feels. Maybe one shoulder feels like it's fatiguing or working harder or faster than the other one. This is just how imbalance and asymmetry are showing up within your body, and it will start to balance out over time and consistency with this sequence. Stand with your feet hip width apart, with both feet pointed straight ahead. Raise your hands directly out in front of you so they're in line with your shoulders. Simultaneously bend your hips and bend your knees at the same time while keeping even pressure on your heels and toes throughout the entire exercise. You might go into a quarter squat, a half squat, or as low as 3/4 of a squat. Depth is not important. You maintaining balance between your front foot and heel is the most important part of this exercise. As you're in the squat position, hold for the recommended duration of time. Remember to keep your breath steady and fluid. Your abs should not be tense, and your body should be working around your steady rhythmic breath. Pay attention to if you're swaying front and back or side to side. You eventually want to remain balanced, still, and stable as your body acquires function and symmetry. An alternative option for those of you who want to add a slight challenge to this exercise is to rotate your palms face up towards the ceiling. This is going to place external rotation on your shoulders, which is going to make your shoulders and hips have to work a little bit harder together to support one another. Lie on your back with both legs straight out on the floor. Take one leg and bring it up towards your chest, interlacing your fingers underneath that knee. Make sure that the shin stays parallel to the ground at all times and the foot doesn't move higher or lower. The straight leg should have the foot pointed straight up towards the ceiling. With the foot of the bent leg, make 40 outward circles in the direction away from your body. Then make 40 inward circles in the direction towards the center of your body. Then point and flex your ankle back and forth. As you perform any directional movement, be incredibly aware of keeping your ankle, knee, and hip aligned. What we don't want is for the ankle to start moving outwards, or the knee to start moving inwards, or the opposite. The knee moves out and the ankle moves in. This is about keeping your ankle, knee, and hip in a straight line as the foot is asked to function. For most people, this is incredibly difficult at the start because we're so used to compensating and cheating when it comes to getting our foot to work that asking a leg to stay straight seems almost like an impossible task. Take a note as how hard this exercise is for you day one and any day after that, and track your progress over time. You should start to notice that through consistency, this exercise becomes easier and you can add more rotations as it does. The goal here is to essentially have enough function to be able to do 40 or 50 rotations in each direction and it feel like a simple exercise. Imagine what's going to happen to your walking when your foot can truly function in a straight, aligned position. Balance and symmetry check. How does one foot rotate different than the other? Do they fatigue the same level? Or does one feel like it can do the entire thing without getting worn out, and the other leg gets extremely tired early on? This is all about how imbalance and asymmetry show up within your body. And this will balance out over time the more consistent you are with this exercise, the sequence, and this program. Lie on your back with your knees bent and bottoms of your feet flat on the floor. Ankles, knees, and hips should be in line. Make sure your feet are parallel. Place a strap around your legs just above your knees. The strap should allow about 4 to 6 inches of space between your knees when the strap is tight. For most people, that's a fist width of distance. Place your arms out to the side at a 45-degree angle from your body, palms face up. Press your knees out into the strap and relax. On and off, nice and slow. This is not a light switch where you're turning on and off fast. I want you to think of this as like a volume dial, slowly turning up the intensity, finding that pressure at about half of your strength, and then slowly turning down that intensity. The goal is to get both hips to synchronize and function together. So pay attention if you feel a little bit of a wobble or a little bit of a shake. That's the tug of war of imbalance and asymmetry showing up. As this imbalance shows up, write it down, pay attention, and track how that gets better and more stable as this exercise gets more functional for you over time. Also remember that we're only using our hips, no abs, no lower back, and breathe through the entire duration of this exercise. Your breath should be rhythmic and slow as your hips learn to function around your breath. As we get your ankles, knees, and hips to work better together, we want to make sure that this strap is keeping your knees aligned and not allowing the knees to cave inward or go out wider than the hips or the ankles. Again, with your upper body relaxed, go ahead and press your feet evenly into the ground to lift your hips up off the ground. I don't care how high you go, even if it's a matter of just a few inches, or if you can really get your hips in line with your shoulders and your knees. The goal here is balance and symmetry, not range of motion. Lower your hips back down to the ground, and as your hips touch the floor, relax your lifting muscles, but keep maintaining pressure against that strap. You want to press out at about 25 to 50% of your available strength. As you go to do the lifting motion, that arch should stay the same. Most people will actually tilt their pelvis backwards, flatten their lower back, and then lift with a flat, straight, rigid spine. The goal is to keep a gentle arch in your back throughout the entire motion. So as you lift up and as you set down, your hips should be touching the floor. The lower back at no point should touch the floor. Again, press the feet firmly into the ground, lift the hips up, and then as you lower your hips, when your hips make contact with the ground, relax your lifting muscles. Repeat for the recommended number of sets and reps. Balance and symmetry check. Do both sides work the same? Do you feel a wobble in your pelvis when you lift it off the ground? Do you notice your back is working harder than your glutes, your butt muscles, or your quads, or your hamstrings? Where do you feel this exercise? Pay special attention and write that down and track how that feeling starts to change the more consistent you are with this exercise. Any feelings of imbalance or asymmetry will level out and rebalance out over time with this sequence. Pay also close attention to how your feet are pressing in the ground to drive your hips up. Are you just trying to drive your heels downward? Or do you try to roll onto the outer edge of one foot or lift the toes off on the other foot? You want to make sure all 5 toes are gently pressed and stay against the ground as the heels and the balls of the feet have even pressure as you're driving this lifting motion. Again, if that's not happening, this will balance out over time. Stand with your feet hip width apart, with both feet pointed straight ahead. Raise your hands directly out in front of you so they're in line with your shoulders. Simultaneously, bend your hips and bend your knees at the same time while keeping even pressure on your heels and toes throughout the entire exercise. You might go into a quarter squat, a half squat, or as low as 3/4 of a squat. Depth is not important. You maintaining balance between your front foot and heel is the most important part of this exercise. As you're in the squat position, hold for the recommended duration of time. Remember to keep your breath steady and fluid. Your abs should not be tense, and your body should be working around your steady rhythmic breath. Pay attention to if you're swaying front and back or side to side. You eventually want to remain balanced, still, and stable as your body acquires function and symmetry. An alternative option for those of you who want to add a slight challenge to this exercise is to rotate your palms face up towards the ceiling. This is going to place external rotation on your shoulders, which is going to make your shoulders and hips have to work a little bit harder together to support one another. Stand with your feet about 4 to 5 inches apart, parallel to each other and pointed straight ahead. Interlace your fingers and flip your palms out to face away from you. Lock your elbows tight so they are completely straight. As you raise your arms overhead, your palms are facing outward and upwards towards the ceiling. Make sure your stomach is completely relaxed throughout this entire exercise. Using the muscles in the front of your hips, tip your pelvis forward to place a little bit more of an arch in your lower back. Keeping the arch and arms locked out overhead, gently lean forward as far as what feels comfortable, keeping the arch in your lower back, your hands overhead, and most importantly, without your pelvis shifting backwards. If your arms start to fall forward or the back loses its arch, raise up slightly. You've gone too low. As you do this exercise, you're going to find that you can function with greater ease in this position. Make sure to keep the weight slightly forward into the balls of your feet and your quads tight throughout the entire exercise. And breathe. It's really common for people to want to hold their breath and tense up their ab when they're in a challenging position like this. The whole point of this is to not only restore function to wrist, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles, but to learn how to breathe with ease as we do so. For this exercise, I recommend that you place a pair of athletic shoes on to give your feet a little bit of grip on whatever surface you're going to do this with, whether it's carpet or hardwood floor. Place your back against the wall and keep your feet and knees 6 inches apart. Walk away from the wall until you are in a seated position. Your hips are going to slide down the wall as your feet move forward. And make sure to keep your feet 6 inches along with your knees 6 inches apart. At no point do I want your ankles or knees going wider or closer than your hip width. Your hips should be slightly higher than your knees when you're in the final position. Your ankles should be slightly in front of your knees as well. Put pressure on your heels to drive your pelvis back into the wall. Your entire lower back should be flat on the wall too. This might seem counterintuitive because this whole program is geared to change your posture and to pull you upright and open you up. But for this exercise, I don't want any muscle in your upper body to work. We are trying to put the force and the tension back into your pelvis without your spine trying to take over. So your lower back should be relaxed, your shoulders and neck should be relaxed. We're diaphragmatically breathing, allowing your belly to go in and out with every single breath. Hands on your legs, palms face up. The goal of this is to not only get your legs to work, but equally to teach your upper body to not work. So pay attention to how your upper body feels throughout this exercise. Do you try to close your fist and tense up and shrug your shoulders just to get through? Or are you able to completely shut down your upper body as your lower body figures out how to work? Throughout this exercise, most people try to jam their toes into the ground and make this a knee-loaded position. I want to gently remind you to guide the weight back into your heels so you truly feel like the quads, the muscles in the front of the thighs, are doing all the work. Balance and symmetry check. Pay attention to how both knees look. Are they the same height? Do you feel the work evenly in both legs, or do you feel one side take over more than the other? Another way to look at balance is what I mentioned earlier. Are you able to let your upper body relax, or do you constantly tense it up to get through this exercise?